Crockett for an opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And as I'm sure you can assume, we see this a little bit differently. Here we go again, talking about Biden, Biden, and more Biden. Today is nothing more than a dog and pony show for Republicans to avoid facing the American people for their trash policies that are killing the economy and our democracy. Despite Republicans' claim of backing the blue and being the party of law and order, we're here today because Republicans are willing to throw our country's top law enforcement agents under the bus to appease Trump and execute his political vengeance. Now, I know remembering things is hard for some of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, like remembering not to add reporters into a signal chat discussing military war plans. But let me remind my colleagues that it was Trump who decided to store national secrets and classified documents next to his oversized bathtub and toilet at Mar-a-Lago. It was Trump who took the documents out of the boxes and shared them with his guests. It was Trump who told his staff to move the boxes when the FBI was coming. And it was Trump who appointed Director Christopher Wray as head of the FBI, the same director that allowed the investigation to move forward. As much as Trump and Republicans hate to accept it, we are still a country with laws. And when you break them, there are consequences. Now, make no mistake, we should all be concerned about the FBI. But my concerns as ranking member of this subcommittee, as a member of Congress, and as an attorney, as well as a citizen, are based on things called facts. And when I say facts, I mean clear, indisputable facts, not those alternative facts my Republican colleagues continue pushing onto the American people. So let's talk about facts. Fact. Even prior to being confirmed by the Senate, Kash Patel was directing officials within the FBI to fire members within the Bureau simply because they worked on the lawful investigations into Trump. Fact, Patel failed to disclose his previous work and financial ties with the country of Qatar, a country that, had you had read the Mazars report, released last year by the House Oversight Committee, you would know paid close to $500,000 to Trump while he was president of the United States. Unsurprisingly, the FBI's Foreign Influence Task Force was recently disbanded, and the DOJ also cut back on its Foreign Agents Registration Act enforcement. Our enemies are jumping up and down now that we're doing their work for them. Another fact, Patel has never even been an FBI agent and is now leading the Bureau. Even one of today's Republican witnesses organizations, the Bureau, has advocated having an FBI agent lead the Bureau. But rather than confirm a director with credible, dedicated experience, the Republicans confirmed a political loyalist with no Quantico or FBI training. Talk about DEI. Didn't earn it higher. Another fact, Patel, who rails against telework, what he calls lazy agents, was working part-time in and out of Las Vegas, commuting back and forth between there and DC, while also living in the home of a GOP mega donor. Think about that for a second. Could you imagine what Republicans would have done had, say, James Comey had been living in New York part-time as the FBI director, and if his New York home was owned by, say, George Soros? Speaker Johnson would have forced a floor vote on articles of impeachment within days of this news coming out. But nevertheless, my Republican colleagues are willing to sacrifice safety for stupidity as long as it's loyal. Another fact, Patel and Trump-backed FBI leadership have redirected FBI agents who are working on investigations involving violent crimes against children and child exploitation and transferred them to work on anti-Tesla attacks and redacting Jeffrey Epstein files. Talk about FBI waste and abuse. You simply can't make this stuff up. To be clear, Director Wray testified before Congress last year, noting that, quote, if each one of the FBI's cyber agents and intelligence analysts focus exclusively on the China threat, China's hackers would still outnumber FBI cyber personnel by at least 50 to 1. Yet rather than hire more agents to protect against these cybersecurity threats, Director Patel is reassigning agents to redact Epstein files. Someone please tell me how this makes America safe. It's almost as ridiculous and wasteful as Patel's idea to contract the Bureau with UFC fighters. And while I have very real concerns about the current state of the FBI today, I want to be very clear. My concerns aren't with career agents, the men and women dedicating their lives to protect our country and communities. It's with the irresponsible leadership and reckless decisions coming from Patel, Trump, and Doge staff within the FBI. Our Bureau needs resources to do its job effectively. What it doesn't need is 20-something-year-old Doge bags reviewing materials without having undergone proper vetting and clearance. The American people have a right to be worried, but these worries shouldn't be based on Republican baseless conspiracy theories. Our country is already on a dangerous path, pushing closer to causing irreparable harm. Republican members need to wake up and put Trump loyalties aside to engage in real oversight of the current FBI before it's too late. Congress deserves it. The brave men and women at the Bureau deserve it, and the American people deserve it. I want to add one more point. As a civil rights attorney, I have had to sue law enforcement. There have been times that I can truly say that law enforcement has crossed the line. And I truly believe that there can be one or two in a bunch that can ruin everyone. The problem that I have right now, though, is that we have decided to focus in on something that my Republican colleagues have decided to term as being political. What is political is when somebody says that they are going to come back and seek retribution. What is political is firing people because they simply were following the evidence and doing their jobs as law enforcement has been trained to do. And ultimately, regardless of whether or not anyone believes that it was right to indict the president, not once, not twice, not three, but 4 times he was indicted, ultimately, each of you knows enough to know that at the end of the day, it is citizens that sit on a grand jury that are the ones that decide whether or not evidence exists to go forward with an indictment. And ultimately, when this president was convicted by a jury on the state level, it was a jury of his peers. And so I want to say thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for your commitment. And thank you so much for the testimony that you will provide. With that, I will yield back.
I'm now going to recognize the chairman of the full committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The previous speaker talked about facts. Here's one fact I know. It's night and day dealing with the Bondi Patel Justice Department versus the Garland Ray Justice Department. Under the Pam Bondi as Attorney General, the Foreign Influence Task Force, that group that was responsible for censoring Americans, has been disbanded. The school board's memorandum has been rescinded. We sent 7 subpoenas to Kash Patel 5 weeks ago. The response we've gotten is unbelievable compared to what we got under the previous Justice Department. He's actually given us thousands of documents already, new information that we tried to get from Director Ray that he wouldn't give us. We've already received. We'll be talking about some of that. So that is the fact, complete change from where we were with the previous Justice Department. The previous Justice Department, of course, that couldn't tell us who planted the pipe bombs, who leaked the Dobbs opinion, who put cocaine at the White House, couldn't tell us answers to those questions. But they had plenty of time to put together the memo to say we're going to investigate moms and dads at a school board meeting, as the chairman pointed out. They put together a memorandum. We've now learned it wasn't just in the Richmond field office, but in other field offices where they were equating pro-life Catholics to extremists. We know they raided the president's home. We know they retaliated against whistleblowers. They even put together, the previous speaker talked about politics. The FBI created a questionnaire where they asked their employees about other employees who were maybe giving information to us as whistleblowers. Did that person support Trump? That is as political as you can get. So the real thing here is it's literally night and day, the difference between the kind of information that we're able to receive, the help that we're getting, and the focus on going after traditional bad guys, not having half your agents and half your budgets focused on surveilling the American people. Let's go get the traditional bad guys. That's what Kash Patel is doing at the FBI, getting the FBI back to the mission they've had before, which I know some of our witnesses who served there are going to talk about. So I thank the chairman for putting this together, and I thank our witnesses for being here, and I yield back.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm going to now recognize the ranking member of the full committee, Mr. Raskin.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much, and thanks to Ms. Crockett for calling us together. We are already 10 weeks into the Trump administration, and still the Republicans are recycling the most tiresome, vacuous, and debunked stories, conspiracy theories about the Biden administration, while demurely declining to conduct any oversight at all of the current administration. And I agree with the chairman of the full committee, Mr. Jordan. It is day and night, but I think he's seeing day and night backwards. Donald Trump is turning our country into a gangster state where agencies like the Federal Trade Commission, the FBI, and the Department of Justice act as presidential enforcers, conducting political deals with elected officials like New York City Mayor Adams, corporate shakedowns against ABC, CBS, and other media entities, and law firms like Paul Weiss, Rifkin, Wilmer Hale, and Jenner and Block, demanding pledges of loyalty from citizens, and in some cases, demanding cold, hard cash in lawsuits brought directly by the president against private businesses. Meanwhile, they're offering mass pardons, immunity, and protection to violent insurrectionists, convicted drug beaters, cop beaters, drug traffickers, corrupt politicians, as long as they're willing to kiss the ring and do the president's bidding. Let's look at how this administration is treating the honest men and women of the FBI. In his first days in office, Trump targeted thousands of FBI agents simply for doing their jobs after the mob violence of January 6, 2021, and holding the cop beaters and insurrectionist rioters accountable. FBI agents had to sue to stop this purge and block them from publicly releasing their names to the violent militias like Oath Keepers and Proud Boys, whom President Trump had already given pardons to. And those pardons, by the way, this Department of Justice are extending to other crimes these people have committed, including cocaine trafficking and gun charges. This administration isn't opposing corruption. It's opening the door wide open to corruption every single day for his friends. Donald Trump ordered the FBI to stop conducting background investigations of top White House officials. Why? He disbanded the FBI's Foreign Influence Task Force, charged with identifying and combating malign foreign influence operations targeting the United States. Why? He suspended enforcement of the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act and reduced enforcement of the Foreign Agents Registration Act just 2 days after it was reported that Director Kash Patel had engaged in lucrative consulting work for Qatar and for a Vladimir Putin-connected foreign arms conglomerate. The current FBI leadership is diverting the FBI's resources away from public safety and national security and towards mega conspiracy fixations and obsessions. According to press reports, hundreds of agents ordinarily assigned to defending the national security of the United States have been pulled into a mind-boggling effort where they were pulling all-nighters and working around the clock to review the Epstein files after Attorney General Bondi botched the first attempt at what she said was going to be a complete release of the Epstein files. So it's important to consider what the FBI is not investigating in the frenzy of all these Back to the Future wild goose chases. They're not investigating Signalgate, the extraordinary decision by a group of America's highest national security officials, including one who was in Moscow at the Kremlin at the time, to compromise the safety of our service members and intelligence officers by using Signal, a non-secure commercial application to reveal specific confidential and classified details about an impending military airstrike, complete with timestamps for when F-18 aircraft would launch and arrive at their targets and when Tomahawk missiles would be fired at buildings controlled by Houthi members. What are DOJ and FBI doing to investigate this stunning, dangerous episode of incompetence or recklessness, at the very least, that undoubtedly violates all kinds of federal, criminal, and civil laws? Nothing. In fact, when asked about the signaling chat, Attorney General Bondi changed the subject to Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden. Sound familiar? That's what we're doing today. Just a week after the story broke about this tremendous security breach, she said, case closed. No further investigation, no lessons learned, no hearings. That's the end. Can you imagine what they would be doing if that had happened under President Biden? If his top national security team had been talking about a military strike on signal, there would be 8 special committees and subcommittees investigation, and they'd all be demanding impeachment, the way they're demanding impeachment of judges who blow the whistle on the illegalities of this administration. Well, what else is the FBI not investigating? Elon Musk, his startling ties to the Communist Party of China, the CCP. Musk is bulldozing our federal government while accessing the people's most sensitive databases. And he's traveled to China multiple times in the last several years and met with the highest level Communist Party officials. He's continued to open factories in China where he does half of his business, even as he works as a, quote, special government employee to dismantle and destroy our federal government. Can you imagine if President Biden had done that, what our colleagues would be saying? Well, look, in this new state that we're in, the FBI is not here to enforce the law. It exists to allow the president to shake down businesses and individuals, offering them protection and immunity if they comply and persecution if they don't. The administration installed as the head of the FBI, Kash Patel, known for being the man who will do anything for Trump. They also installed as deputy director Dan Bongino, a far-right podcaster and conspiracy theorist who boasted in 2018 that his entire life right now is about owning the libs. His appointment was a particular betrayal of Patel's promise that he would appoint a deputy director who would be an onboard active special agent, as has been the case for 117 years. Already stories of intimidation and pressure in this DOJ and this FBI are trickling out. 7 veteran prosecutors were forced to resign rather than take part in a corrupt bargain to dismiss charges that were brought by a grand jury in New York against the mayor of New York, Eric Adams. The U.S. Attorney for the Southern District, Daniel Sassoon, who clerked on the Supreme Court for Justice Scalia and was active in the Federalist Society, resigned, saying nothing had changed in the facts of the case, nothing had changed in the law of the case, nothing had changed in the evidence. It was simply this political deal that Donald Trump had cooked up with the mayor of New York, who traveled down to Mar-a-Lago. The longtime criminal chief in the DC U.S. Attorney's Office was forced to resign rather than open the current bogus investigation into Biden-era clean energy projects. So what we see at the Trump FBI and DOJ is part of a broad pattern. They're targeting lawyers who took up causes or clients that Donald Trump doesn't like, and they've issued illegal executive orders intended as threats against them. The president and his friends are threatening federal judges that ruled against them to halt their blatantly illegal executive actions, calling for impeachment of the judges. And there have been threats against their families made online. The president and his friends are threatening journalists and deporting legal immigrants for exercising their First Amendment rights, sending a clear message to anyone thinking of speaking up against the administration. The FBI's leadership are threatening to take the FBI down a very dangerous path today, one that's entirely incompatible with the values of the men and women of the FBI and the best traditions of the agency. Once again, with today's hearing, my colleagues are turning a blind eye to what's going on right now, choosing instead to regurgitate and recycle debunked and discredited lies about the Biden administration and somebody having an investigation into parents and school boards. It's been debunked a million times. That was an investigation into people making violent death threats against school board members. Nobody was ever arrested. Nobody was ever charged with anything. And yet they've been dining out on that. I think it's for 5 years now, talking about something that led nowhere, and there was nothing wrong with it in the first place. So the men and women of the FBI deserve to know that Congress is watching, and we got your back. We're not going to stand idly by while this administration tries to turn the FBI into an arm of a pay-to-play gangster state. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Thank you. Real quick, we're